I'm a little bit all over the place, I would say, since my son passed away 1 month ago. And if you haven't really watched my previous videos, I talk a little bit more about it there, but so maybe that came as a bomb for you right now. But that's the truth. My son passed away 1 month ago, and me and my fiancé are navigating this as good as we can. And for me, it's to like acknowledge him as much as I can, and also acknowledge my sorrow. That's very important for me, I feel. And sometimes it's a bit hard because we are in different places in our grief. And then, you know, it can be a little bit challenging to be together, and we need some space, for example, from each other. But in the end, it's like we have a great deal of understanding that we are on different places, and a great deal of acceptance and, you know, a kind of love for each other that is not touched by our argues, for example. And that always feels very, very good to know that, like, we always got each other's back, even when we feel apart from each other, even when we argue or are angry at each other or frustrated or whatever it is. It's very like comforting to feel that like we have such a deep rooted connection. So like the storms is like they are on the surface levels. They don't like get underneath us as much anymore. And this feels so light and good to feel like we are actually in it together, even when we are like apart from each other and need some space, for example. And now is one of those moments where we have a little bit space, and to feel that like the love we have for each other is not touched by the space we need to take, for example, or the argues that we have. And it has taken us quite a while to come here. A lot of rounds with, you know, stuff coming up in our relationship where it's like sometimes it's been very, very hard and frustrating. But one thing that I've learned, and we both have, but now I'm speaking for myself, is that whenever I feel triggered by her, there's also something I hold within myself. I wouldn't be triggered otherwise. And if you look at it, it's like, for example, when you know, people who are afraid of going with an elevator. My mom is one of those people, for example. She gets a bit afraid and like a little bit panicking when she enters an elevator. And for most people, it's just like you go into the elevator, you go to the level that you need to go, and that's it, right? But for her, it's like something is at stake, right? And we all have those different things that triggers us. And I think that one of the things that really have like why we thrive as much as we do in my relationship with my fiancé is that we realize that when we get triggered, it's not about the other person, it's about something within myself. And when we go there, when I go there and like I take ownership for like, oh, I feel so frustrated on you right now and I want you to change a behavior, for example, there's always something I hold to be true within myself that is not true. So it's almost like peeling off a layer of a mask I've been wearing. and underneath the mask I am revealed. That's how I perceive it. And then when I don't feel triggered anymore, you can like look at it from a much more clearer view. For example, I can say something that triggers her. This was the case before. I shared a perspective without her asking for it. And she got upset with me because she didn't want that perspective and she didn't agree with it. And sometimes I can do that. I can share my worldview or whatever and kind of project it onto someone else. And this time I did it with my fiancé, right? And it's, for me, it's not a big deal anymore when she's like getting upset with me for like sharing something that she doesn't agree with, for example, or that she thinks that she didn't ask for it, right? And instead it's like, it's not that hard for me to just like apologize and say that, okay, I understand that like sometimes I can go there to share something that you didn't even ask for. And I can see why that's triggering for you. And I know that sometimes it sounds like I'm sitting on the answer. And I know I'm not. And I can also see that that's triggering for you. So I don't go into like, yes, you are, like before I could go in and like, you feel triggered about me, that's about you. It's not about me, instead of looking at myself or like apologizing, because I don't lose anything about when I apologize anymore, because there's nothing at stake, because I'm not trying to protect anything. And then it's so much easier to like meet in love and like, yeah, I understand you. Maybe I still hold the same perspective as I came with, but I don't need to put it up in your face because you didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for my advice. You didn't ask to be coached. And I can really feel and sense that like, of course she don't want to be like coached by me. And that's not like my role in my relationship with her as well. And I can see that that can feel very off. And to me, it's just to apologize. I don't need to justify anything because I'm not protecting anything. And I don't feel triggered by her being triggered by me because I can see that like her trigger is on her. That's not me. Like she feels upset. Even if she makes it be about me, it's still like your trigger is yours. So therefore I don't need to like defend anything or, because I can see that I trigger something in you. And that's hers. And still, I can take ownership of what I said. And I can see that like, yeah, I can understand why you feel triggered. And it's unnecessary for me to go there. I don't need to like share a perspective on my worldview and like put it in your face. That's unnecessary. If you want advice from me, you can come to me, but I don't need to put it in your face. So that's one example, for example, of like owning your own stuff. And, then it becomes very easy and effortless to be in the relationship. And I feel like that's one of our core strengths, why we are working so well together. Because we are really seriously looking at ourselves, taking ownership for our own things, and also expressing when something feels off, or like, even if it's like, yes, if she said something and I get triggered, even if it's like, yes, that's my shit, but I can still feel like that's off to say, and I can express that. But it's more like, where am I coming from when I'm expressing it? Am I expressing it from a place that you are responsible for my suffering right now, fuck you? Or am I coming from a place of like, I don't like when you speak to me like this. I feel frustrated, I feel triggered by how you are acting right now. And still, I get to look at my stuff. So it's both an ownership for myself, but also setting a boundary of how I want to be treated. And it has taken me a couple of years to like really navigate this and be where I am, because I know so many times, like when I was in an argue with one of my exes, for example, it felt like the world was shattering. It felt like now the relationship will end because it felt so strong. But I don't feel it like that anymore. Not at all. Because first of all, I feel like I don't feel like she's completing me. Like I am completing myself. She is like elevating my life, I would say. And it feels deeper and more rich with her in it. But I don't need her in order to feel amazing about myself. So there is no like codependency. And most relationships have that like kind of codependent dynamic where one is like very independent and one is very like codependent. And we are like navigating that kind of interdependency where it's like, yes, we affect each other. So therefore, if I feel triggered, like, or for example, when she said to me before, I feel triggered now, and I think that's a bad thing to say of you, from you. Like, I don't want your perspectives, for example. I don't want you to coach me. I agree with her, and I see it and I understand it, and then she needed a space from me and I took some space from her. And that's when you get into that like interdependent relationship that is very healthy, in my opinion, because it's like we both get to express ourselves and our needs, and also like, you trigger me right now, stop with that behavior, please, I don't like it. And still we get to look at ourselves, and still we get to feel those emotions that is behind that trigger, because there's always something behind the trigger that we ourselves need to face. And that's not her responsibility for like taking me there, and it's not my responsibility to take her there. That's like our own separate job. And instead it's like, she invites me in when she feels ready to be held, for example, and I can hold her in that, and at the same time taking ownership of how I acted. And because it's like, we are two people interacting with each other, and therefore there will be friction. And because we are two different nervous systems with different upbringings and different perspectives, right? Perspective is a very important thing here, because perspective is what shapes our reality. So if I bring a perspective into the relationship that she doesn't resonate with, for example, and she has another perspective and she shares that, before I would like just stand in my perspective really strongly and like, this is the way, and like, I don't need you to approve of me, and I don't need you to understand me, and I'm not gonna try to understand you either. And nowadays, it's important for me to like understand her perspective, where she is coming from, why it feels like it feels, because that's empathy. That's like me saying, hey, I want to understand you. I want to get closer to your worldview right now, even if I don't fully agree with it. And that doesn't matter, because like agreeing and disagreeing, that's just positions that we take. It's not the ultimate truth. They shift from time to time, like throughout life. But understanding someone's worldview, that's precious, because that means that I am willing to get off my high horse, really like come to you and say like, okay, I am very interesting of what you have to say. It feels very important for me to understand you right now. And that just brings us very, like, closer and closer all the time, because that means she starts to feel safe to let me in, and I am invited to hold her emotionally. She goes into like a place within herself that might feel challenging, and like maybe she hasn't been there before, and I can provide a space for her to just be there. And this goes the other way around as well. If you are like into like masculine and feminine polarities and like the different roles in a relationship, I can honestly say that like we both hold the masculine and the feminine within ourselves. And I can only speak from my own perspective, but from embracing both my gentle side and also my like leading side, the vulnerable side and the space holder, it's more complete. I feel more complete, and the same goes. I can see that in my partner as well. Like, and we embrace both aspects really well. So I'm not only the one holding her, for example. She's also there for me in the same way. When I feel like I don't trust you, but then she really tries to understand me. She really tries to like see my perspectives or worldview, for example. I invite her in, and she's holding space for me. So it really goes both ways around in our relationship. And I feel like that's why we are working so well together, and we have kind of depth in our love that goes beyond the argues. Our love is not shaken by anything, not even the passing of our son, who died a month ago. That's a reality that we are facing right now, that goes very up and down. And our love for each other isn't affected by it. And we are still meeting, expanding, elevating our relationship even deeper in the name of love, in the name of Odin, that is our son. So with that being said, I feel complete for now. So if you're still here, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.